I don't judge parents. I really try to listen to them. I am happy to judge the tech companies. I assume parents are doing the best for their kids that they can in their current circumstances, right? And that they love them and that they're just trying to navigate this crazy digital world.
Welcome to The Fair Fight, a show for you and your fight against corporate power. I'm Max Miller, an antitrust attorney, a corporate skeptic, and a prairie populist. And joining me, former FTC Commissioner Alvaro Bedoya, a man who took on corporate power for you, and the president fired him for it.
Every day we're told that the defining fight of our lives is Democrat versus Republican. We're told to worry about the left versus the right. Max and me are a lot more worried about the money at the top versus all of us underneath. And we think that needs to be a fair fight. So we're taking your questions, sharing your stories, and getting you answers about your rights in this economy.
So put on those boxing gloves, tighten up those laces, and enter the arena, because it's time to join the fair fight.
All right, so me and you, Max, we are both dads. And I'm wondering, how do you and your wife work with social media? How do you handle it with your kids? What do you let them do?
Well,
what do you let them not do? Tell me.
So number one, this obviously is an important question for every parent as to how we deal with technology and social media. I'll just say that the idea of kids having social media profiles before they've reached, some age, I'm not sure we've totally decided on what age that would be. I think parents tend to have some kind of set level of when they think social media is okay for kids. But it's more just about how do we limit the amount of time that they spend on addictive platforms. Right. And so for my kids, it's a constant battle with YouTube kids. Right.
Yeah.
And the short form videos, scrolling through those videos. And what we've been able to do is just to have clear expectations of when screen time is over. But how about you, Alvaro? I mean, I've got 5 kids and it's a mixed family, right? So kind of different rules at different households, and we have to navigate that. But you've got 2 kids that are much younger than mine are.
Right. So a lot of what we think about is modeling for them that we're not on our phones all the time. And I got to be honest, this is something I really struggle with because I work really hard to get home around the time they're getting home from school. So one of the things that I realized was that as long as I had a phone on me, it was like having a candy dispenser on me. But I needed to have it out of sight, and I needed to have something that told me, don't do it. And so I bought like a balsa wood box at Michael's or something like that. And I divided it down the middle, and I had my kids decorate it. So my son got to decorate half of it. My daughter got to decorate half of it. And so it says, "Do not open, play with us." And it's got truck stickers. So that means it's my son. And that's my daughter. "Do not open, play with us." That's my daughter. And then she hit this with the pen.
That's a great idea.
Honestly, man, it works periodically, but it's a struggle, man. It's a struggle. And I will say,
what if I'm just on my phone ranting on Twitter?
That's bad. Turns out that's bad. Turns out that
I don't know.
I'll just speak for myself that Papa thinks it's more important to pop off on Twitter than to hang out with them.
It's not that it's more important. It's just that, sometimes somebody's being stupid on the internet,
Yeah, that's right. There's that XCKD comic, but someone is wrong on the internet. So speaking of people being wrong on the internet, one of the things that we did a lot of work on while we were at the Federal Trade Commission was trying to separate the wheat from the chaff on these allegations about
shaft?
So I did not grow up in Iowa. Did I say chaff? Is it chaff?
I'd say chaff. I don't know. I mean, well,
All right.
now you got
I mean,
me
I believe you.
doubting it.
You're from Ankeny. I mean, you know this stuff.
I mean,
so,
but that doesn't mean that we pronounce things correctly.
All right. Well, I will take my cues from the Iowan.
You know how we pronounce CREEK?
Do you say crick?
Crick.
Crick. Yeah. Parts of upstate New York said crick. But anyway, so when we were at FTC, there was a lot of allegations around social media about it being addictive, about it causing eating disorders, especially in young girls, about it causing depression. And one thing we noticed really quickly is that the FTC was built out of lawyers, economists, and technologists and engineers, coders, right?
Technologists relatively recently. That wasn't even
in the last like 15 years or so, 20 years. And we needed help in figuring out the wheat from the chaff on these allegations.
We're going to have to look it up and verify.
And so at some point though, Max, someone told me, you know, Alvaro, that these social media companies are hiring tons and tons of psychologists and brain experts. And so I asked our Iowan law clerk, Kate, to go on LinkedIn and figure out how many of these psychologists are getting hired by these social media companies and big tech companies. And she came back to me, and I don't know if you remember this, she goes, Alvaro, I can't. And I said, why? And she said, there's too many of them. Why don't you have me look up the PhD psychologists, you know, and brain scientists working on these issues? I might be able to figure that out for us. So I said, sure, figure out how many PhD psychologists and brain scientists there are. She comes back, Max, and she says, Alvaro, I found public LinkedIn profiles for about 180 or 190 of them. One company alone employs 150 psychologists and brain scientists on their staff, at least PhDs, because that's what's on LinkedIn. And so then, of course, the question is like, what on earth are these people doing? So then we asked Kate to go on the public job boards to see what they were hiring for these roles. And what she came back with, I think, was the most depressing thing, which was a couple of them had job descriptions up of, hey, we're trying to mitigate, you know, harms that may come from extended use. And they use those careful terms. But what we quickly found was that most of these jobs were for UI and UX, for user, you know, interface and user
monetization.
For monetization, prolonged engagement. Most of these jobs were for people who are going to make the platforms more sticky, more addictive, more quote unquote engaging. And so that is when Max. And
so
this
it sounds like there was a lot of chaff in there and not the
a lot of chaff. Probably you should use a better metaphor because chaff is harmless, whereas what we're talking about is actually quite harmful.
Alvaro,
did you look it up?
We got it. Is it chaff or chaff? I do not know genuinely.
Here we go.
So we're gonna play it.
You're gonna play it? All right. No.
I don't think
it is not chafe.
Chafe, but I do think chaff is probably closer.
Wheat and chaff, wheat and chaff. We'll find out.
Separate the wheat from the chaff.
I'm from upstate New York, dude. I have no idea. But
there's going to be tons of agriculture people like writing in telling us that we're
idiots.
Which we are, but you know.
Admittedly. So that is the moment when we realized we need to get some folks on staff that help us make sense of this. And so that is how we hired today's guest, Dr. Jenny Radesky. We decided, with support from Chair Lena Khan, then Chair Lena Khan, to create the Federal Trade Commission's first on-staff behavioral team consisting of a pediatrician, a psychologist, and a human-computer interaction specialist, a technologist. And Dr. Radesky, who was our anchor on this team, who built it out for us and helped us make sense of these allegations. And we are super lucky to have her with us today to answer our listeners' questions about social media, chatbots, what it's doing to our kids, what it's doing to our teens, and what you as a parent can do about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jenny Radesky, a pediatrician from the University of Michigan. You can go read her lengthy biography on the internet. She is extremely well awarded, peer reviewed, but for our purposes, what's most important is that she, in my consideration, is our nation's top expert on the impact of social media, chatbots, and other technologies on our kids and on our teenagers. And for that reason, she was the first ever pediatrician hired onto the staff of the Federal Trade Commission when I was there as a commissioner, and Max was there as one of my top advisors on corporate power and these issues. So before we begin, Dr. Radesky, I want to put out some important disclaimers, because while you are a doctor, for folks listening, Dr. Radesky is not your doctor. In order for her to provide you medical advice, she would need to know all sorts of information about you, your situation, your health. This information you can hear today is based on the now pretty extensive research, peer-reviewed research that is out there. Obviously, Dr. Radesky's own experiences, but this is not medical advice. Disclaimer number 2, Dr. Radesky was on staff with us at the Federal Trade Commission, but all the conversations you're going to hear about are not related to law enforcement investigations, also not related to discussions of cases. These are discussions about research that we had while we were in, as we were trying to get smart on all of these issues. So welcome, Dr. Radesky.
We got lots of questions here, so we might as well just get to the
let's
first
do
question.
Everybody has lots of questions.
It's an important
issue.
topic for parents. We love it. Okay, here we go.
If you could wave a magic wand, what would you recommend around when children get phones, and once they get phones, when the shackles are off? A lot of enterprising 12-year-olds can get around a lot of things parents try and put in to keep them out of trouble. And so how do you navigate that back and forth?
So what I think this is the top question on parents' minds. What do you say to that, Dr. Radesky?
So I think before we get started, I want to say that I don't judge parents. I really try to listen to them. I am happy to judge the tech companies. And so every response I give is really going to be trying to go easier on parents. I assume parents are doing the best for their kids that they can in their current circumstances, right? And that they love them, and that they're just trying to navigate this crazy digital world that the platforms have created. But I do think it's always worth thinking about, why were these products designed this way? Why is it so hard to parent around them? And smartphones are a perfect example. So when the iPhone was first introduced in 2007, there really was no consideration of how are kids going to experience this product, right? I watched the whole Steve Jobs introductory demonstration when he talked about the iPhone, and he didn't mention kids at all. Once he used the word kiddie to kind of tease about another app that was, not doing a good job or something. He used it in a derogatory way. My point here is that if adults are designing products for other adults, and especially products that they want to, sell things with, market things with, collect data with, and they're not thinking about kids' needs as a first principle, we're always going to have these unintended consequences of it's like smartphones are a mess. They've become one of the biggest stressors. This decision of when do I get my kid a smartphone has become so fraught because of the fact that these products have not followed child-centered design or youth-informed design. So that's why it's a fraught issue. I have a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old, both boys. So I'm living it too. And I think one thing to think of is right now our main options for smartphone products are these fully loaded internet connected computers that are not developmentally aligned with what a kid needs. So think about your kid. All right, if you have an 8-year-old, let's say they live in different households, your family might be separated or goes to grandma's or something, you probably want a way to text them, talk to them, follow their GPS, maybe FaceTime with them. And you can't get that through a flip phone. But if you get them a smartphone, you're also giving them access to the whole internet and the app store. And so many parents I've talked to had said, I got them a phone, and then all of a sudden they have like a million games on there. They've opened a Snapchat account. They've like opened an Instagram account. Like why does it go from 0 to 60 so fast? And part of that is the design. If you have your default design be access everything, as many downloads, as many contacts as possible, that may help the company meet their business objectives of more money and more reach, but it doesn't help you as a parent help create some guardrails around this powerful technology that you just introduced to your kids. So that's one way to frame it. I'm happy to talk about best ages, but
yeah,
I think that one thing to think about is, okay, these products were not always designed with our kids in mind. So how do I kind of retrofit it or put some my own guardrails around it so that it's going to work for us instead of just feeling like it takes over?
To our listeners' question, though, if you could wave a wand, how do you on-ramp your kids? When do you on-ramp them to this technology? Maybe in the staggered way that you're describing, right? At first with less functionality than later.
Exactly.
How would you do it?
If I could wave a wand, I would make a low-cost, like starter smartphone that would be safe for even an elementary school kid if that's what a family needed.
Yeah.
And it had limited functionality. So just the, talk, text, GPS, maybe a camera. Kids do some pretty cool stuff with cameras. They also take lots of selfies, which is a whole other, issue. But that would be my magic wand, and that these wouldn't cost extra money. Because right now, some of these starter phones exist. You have the Gab or the Pinwheel or the Bark phone, but families have to pay an extra monthly fee to pay for either the data plan or the device. And a lot of families can't afford that. They're like, I'm going to give a hand-me-down, either iPhone or Android to my kid because that's what I have and it's cheap and I'm just going to give them that. And then sometimes those older phones have outdated operating systems that don't connect well to like the family guide or the family sharing software. So that would be my magic wand, is like a starter phone that actually then grows with kids. So let's say you have a teenager who is now like 12 or 13. There's a recent study in Pediatrics that showed kids who got their first smartphone by ages 12 or 13 had small but significantly higher rates of depression, worse sleep, and less physical activity. Wow. So that's probably because they were accessing a lot of stuff through their smartphones, social media, video games, not sleeping as well. So that one takeaway I have from that is that definitely not a fully loaded smartphone before high school.
Which is typically, I think, 15 maybe?
14,
or 14.
14, 15. I think
that's a helpful rubric.
Middle school is such a tough time. It's like miserable for kids. You have so many different developmental processes going on. You really start caring about your peers. Their feedback is so important to you. You want to be connected with them all the time. You want to separate from your parents and not need them as much. You want to figure out what you can handle on your own. And the smartphone becomes this conduit for some of that freedom and exploration. I can go out, as my sons would do. I'm going out thrifting, Mom. I will text you like when I'm coming back. Or
you have awesome sons. That's amazing.
That is a really great way.
I'm listening. I'm hearing the Macklemore song in the back, and I realize that dates us.
That's it. And or having a way to coordinate. A way to give them more freedom. A way that they can like text their friends silly, stupid gifts and feel more connected with their friend group that is helping their forming their sense of identity and who they are and where they belong. But all of that can happen through texting and through group chats and through just like message-based platforms. You don't need social media.
Limited functionality is what you're getting to. That it's like you can get some of the good without the bad. So
absolutely.
we talked a little bit here about kind of some of the problems with exposing kids to it too early, but our next question actually comes and deals with not exposing. So I'm going to put this up on the screen here. Alvaro, can you read it?
Yeah, no worries. It says, what about the cost of not exposing our kids to social media and AI chatbots? My 4 and 6-year-old get 3 hours of TV a week, Friday night, movie night, Saturday morning cartoons, same as I did as a kid. They have infinite book on tape access and usage, but we don't use devices or screen time otherwise. My goal is to do this as long as possible. Is there a cost I'm not considering to not using this technology? So this listener kind of comes at it at a different place, wondering, hey, am I doing this right? What do you say to that, Dr. Radesky?
So I think one thing for families to hear is that there are many ways to do this right. We're often hearing messages about these kind of branded parenting styles, like be a smartphone-free childhood parent, or be a gamer parent, or something else like that. And really the main ingredient to successful raising of humans is understanding what your values are and who your kid is, and treating it as like with a real growth mindset of, I am going to lay down a few rules of how I think we should do technology in our family. We're going to change it up as my kid grows and they're in new developmental stages, or we will learn from our failures. Like you might decide, okay, we're arguing way too much about this video game console. We're going to put it away for a month and we're just going to do an experiment to see how it feels to not have access to that. So the more you can have a mindset of everything's a learning moment, fail forward, figure out how, playfully to kind of work with your kids around what media is helping be the best kind of cool source of information and connection and downtime. There are many ways to do that right. I think the question here is like, what if you prefer to be a bit more of a reserved parent who's like, tech is going to have a time and a place in our household. It's not going to take up every day. I love that because it's actually countering what a lot of the big tech companies want, which is as much of our time and attention as possible. Right now, so many parents feel flooded with tech that is just always ubiquitous. It's always within their kids' reach. Many parents tell me, I just can't get them to turn off YouTube or any of these other tech that have this lots of engagement prolonging designs that just they're sticky. They want kids' attention and they hold on to it really well. So it's exhausting to try to get your kid to transition from that. So having some very clear, predictable routines around tech really helps. Like in this case, the Friday movie night, love that. That is the biggest way you can connect with your kids around technology. A couple important things here. One is it's long form media. It's been created by some creative people who know how to write a script, know how to animate, know how to tell a story.
For now.
Right?
AIs will be writing all the movies.
No,
very soon.
you can decide your movie nights have no AI generated content. You can as a parent. That's okay. And I wish that we had better labeling to make sure that we knew that transparently every time. But it's a really great way to connect with your kids. When they're little, part of it is just giggles and laughs and snuggles. When they're older, part of it is seeing inside your kid's mind a little bit. Like it's really interesting to watch, with my boys. I watch a lot of like sci-fi with them. And then there are so many stories within sci-fi that have to do with politics and, oppression. And, it is a nice way to sit back and have someone else tell some stories and make some meaning. It's also a nice way to have difficult conversations. So we've been watching The Pit together as a family, right? It's a lot, and they're like, gosh.
They don't
Mom,
shy away from the graphic wounds in that show.
We like yell out. Yeah. We yell out loud sometimes when we see things in that, but it's cool in a couple ways that I didn't expect. It connects them to my experience. Mom, did you ever have that happen when you were a resident? And I was like, yeah, it's disgusting. It's upsetting. And those are stories I never told them before, because when you're a resident, you're just like so busy. And that's what I've been hearing about The Pit, is that it's showing so many people feel seen by what they're watching on the screen, that it opens up new conversations about the trauma of medical training or of COVID and like what people have gone through. And then the other cool part is that sometimes there are storylines that I don't realize they're going to resonate so much with my kids. The fentanyl overdose from a kid who bought Xanax, off online or something,
Wow.
like really resonated with my 16-year-old who was like, I will never do that. I promise, And I was like, I would never have known how to have that conversation with you. So anyway, those are the benefits of co-viewing. The other benefits of there's a time and a place. Tech doesn't take up our whole life. It's not the thing we can grab whenever we're bored and whenever we have downtime. You're teaching kids self-regulation. Like, this is when you turn it on. This is when you turn it off. Saturday morning cartoons are perfect for that. In my family, it's like Saturday and Sunday is their gaming time. Those mornings, and the Nintendo Switch parental controls app helps me turn off, the console when they're done playing. So kids learn informally by watching and doing. A lot of times as parents, we think we need to lecture them and teach them all the rules. And actually, just by going through the motions of your daily routines, they internalize a lot of limit setting, of self-regulation, of understanding the role that tech should play in their lives. And so that is one really strong argument for just not having all access to tech all the time and being a role model in terms of how you use tech as a parent.
I like your framing of it as teaching them self-regulation. One thing that we found successful in my family is having you have an hour today, right, to be on your device. And it's you get to decide how you spend that hour, whether it's all at one time or whether it's 15 minutes here, 15 minutes later. And I love that idea of it being self-regulated. I'm hearing lots of kind of anecdotal stories about kids in elementary school these days and how there is a lot of behavioral issues. I think some people chalk it up to the pandemic because a lot of those kids that were entering preschool, kindergarten, are now much, much older and entering into the school system. The pandemic is one cause, but the other one would be technology, right? They have exposure to technology from a very early age. Are you seeing kind of some of these social behaviors being related to technology use for young kids in elementary school?
Yeah, so I haven't seen research published yet on the kind of cohort effects of kids who were home as young kids during the pandemic. I'm seeing it clinically, though. So I run the Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics division at University of Michigan. And so we had started a new clinic post-pandemic to help kids who were struggling with their readjustment back to school. And we saw especially the kind of 4 to 5-year-olds were really struggling with kindergarten entry. And a couple hunches that I heard from teachers was a lot of screen time is that when families were stuck at home and didn't have access to as many opportunities, screens became the default way to keep kids occupied. And
It was
the
a
more
babysitter
it
for
was,
so
and it
many
was,
families.
and that's a perfect example of the way that structural inequality or sources of lack of opportunity lead to higher screen time. So you might think, oh, all these poor families have, higher screen time and what's wrong with them? And it's much more about the fact that they don't have access to childcare, after school opportunities, free aftercare. Parents are working multiple jobs. So there's definitely research to show that. And actually, we published a study showing that when across multiple countries during COVID, when lockdown was more stringent and families didn't have access to childcare, their kids' screen time was way higher.
Just shot way
Right?
up.
I mean, of course, that makes total sense. But the recent American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines, which I'm not an author, but I was the chair of the council that put them together, highlights this fact of if you aren't creating family supports, paid family leave, or childcare access, or a livable wage, or other things that help families support their kids and have a balanced life. If you have an economy that's just extracting time and exhaustion from parents, you're going to have lots of screen time. Because screen time and technology fills that gap that's left there. And parents find it what parents say is it's the easy button. It's the default. It's always on.
We have a question that's on point that we should turn to in a second. But let me just observe, you're raising something that doesn't come up nearly enough, which is my experience from just existing in the world is that it is the parents with disposable income who can afford these fancy toys with no screens that are kind of handcrafted, made out of wood,
Right.
and we subscribe to a Love Every box, and these are screenless, designed probably by people as brilliant as you are, Dr. Radesky, that to help kids learn. But what I see is exactly what you say, is that it is the working parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs, some of whom have to take their kids with them, to do delivery runs,
Yep.
who are saying, I don't have a choice. I have to somehow entertain my kid. This is what really rubs me the wrong way, is that when these companies, as you noted at the very top of this episode, design these technologies to be so addictive, design them to not have controls that keep random ads showing up with shooting all over the place and people dying all over the place. The people they're hurting the most are working people, moms and dads who work 2 or 3 jobs, who don't have enough time for the money for the babysitter or for the fancy toys. There is a real class issue, I would say, happening here.
Yep.
That people like me who are lawyers and have disposable income deal with a lot less.
And it completely. And also the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth and emotional bandwidth you need to have to parent around today's digital world is exhausting. It's so much work because tech is designed to often go against a lot of our parenting goals. Like, I want my kid to sleep a good night's sleep. I want them to focus during homework time. I want them to mostly watch wholesome content has great role models and tells great stories. And yet the default easiest thing for them to grab is a short form infinite scroll feed with a lot of trash in it. So you wind up with with parents who are so exhausted just with their place in the world and not having the either the agency or the time to sit down and be like, okay, who do you follow and what are you seeing on social media and who is contacting you on that video game, and all of these extra conversations and extra settings we need to do as parents to try to stem the kind of tide of engagement-based design that currently exists in the digital world.
And it's really disgusting how the companies try to make it seem like they're just putting a product out there and it's the consumer's responsibility to regulate themselves or to regulate their kids, right? But it's a clear choice that the companies make to try to make their product addictive, right?
Well,
and to then say that it's the parents' job to keep their kids from being addictive, right? It's like, where does the responsibility ultimately lie?
One thing, that drives me crazy is when platforms that have short form feeds and they say, but people like this. This is good. People are clicking on it.
We designed it for them to like
right?
it.
I like cheeseburgers and candy.
Exactly.
Should I just eat cheeseburgers and candy? I actually don't like candy. I love cheeseburgers though, so should I just eat those all
So
day?
when they're like, kids love Cocomelon, kids love all of this toy unboxing, I see it as kids can't look away from. Kids can't not click on that thumbnail that has a huge piece of pizza and some, celebrity's face looking amazed or confused, or there's all of these heuristics, which is that's our fast brain, right? That's our fast thinking where we just respond based on impulse. If you have raised a child, you know what impulsive reactions look like. They see something, they want it, they try to grab it right away. That's because young kids, you actually don't develop all of your impulse control and executive functioning until you're 25, but especially in those first 5 to 8 years, so much brain development is happening where kids are slowly learning to pause before they act, or to think and ask for whether it's okay before they run across the street. And so when they see these shiny objects in front of them in the form of all of this, what I call kids clickbait, it's food, toys, chocolate, princess dresses, all of the stuff that you see on YouTube and YouTube Kids is really hard for them to resist watching. And yet it's continues to be reinforced by the algorithm because it's seen as like the successful type of content that gets the most views and the longest engagement. And parents are exhausted with it. I've talked to so many parents who are like, can YouTube just turn that algorithm off? Please give me more control.
No,
so
it
that
goes
my
to
kid
their
can...
bottom line.
Right. I know. They're like, can I just watch Sesame Street and Little Bear? Like some old school long form content. And yet, the screen keeps defaulting to shorts and you get
Right.
AI generated slop for kids. And so I think that this, so one takeaway here for parents, I want to go back to that original question of like, are kids missing out on something by only doing, predictable times of long form media in their week? The answer is no. Kids are not missing out on the current attention economy that is trying to get their attention. And the attention economy leads to two things: longer time and worse content. So if you're a parent who wants to have some time limits and some positive, good storytelling content, then you can try to avoid the attention economy type of platforms. These are the platforms that make money off of ads and data collection. These platforms are like YouTube or like TikTok or Instagram Reels or Roblox or other free platforms that monetize based on time or purchases or clicks.
So going to our next question then, which fits right into this, is about time and quality of content.
Hey, Alvaro. Hey, Max. It's Gwen. I think probably the biggest burning question that every parent has is, what are the long-term impacts? I know that CDC recommends that 2-year-olds get 0 for the screen time, but we all know that that's not the case. So any clarity there? Is it more important what they're watching versus how long they're on the screen?
Great question. I'm going to separate this into the how long, what they're watching, and then how you're using it. So how long is, this has been the big debate, the screen time, like what's the best? Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 2? The truth is that you just don't want to raise kids who are extremely online, who expect it all the time, who it's the first thing they grab when they need to be soothed, where they can't follow their own thoughts and ideas and creativity, because they're just so used to and they're programmed to just be looking for the easy, frictionless, high pleasure thing that's available on a phone or a TV screen. So have screen-free times and tech-free times. I tell parents, carve out times where the tech companies can't reach you. This is your time to preserve there's nothing matters more in highly stressful times like we live in right now. Nothing matters more than your family relationships. Relational health, meaning parent-child relationships, sibling relationships, child-teacher relationships. That is the ultimate source of resilience for kids. It helps them know who they are, how to have healthy relationships, how to regulate their emotions. So carve out those times, whether they're car rides. Car rides are the best with teens. Put on music, talk. You don't have to look at each other face to face. Have, I Spy with little kids. Just don't have the default of the screen goes on. Meal times. So much meaning making happens during meal times. Of course, meal times can be stressful for lots of kids, but you also can cook together. You can talk about the day. Tons of research evidence that having regular family meals is better for kids' emotional health. And then playtime. So play is how we kind of preserve and develop our humanness in this time of AI. Like your thoughts develop so much during play, your imagination, your sense of who you are and what you can handle. And that starts with just back and forth, silly play, tickling and stuff like that when you're a kid. It goes into imaginary play when you're a 5-year-old. It goes into, a teenager's play. I asked my boys, like, what do you do to like play now? And they're like, it's mostly sports. Like it is mostly either card games, board games, My kids are clearly nerds.
No,
so it's like
no, they're great
Dominion. And
Dominion, is that like Risk or
no, it's
because
like,
I've heard it.
Yeah, it's a ye olde kind of game where you have these different cards and you have to like put them in combinations.
Is it like
to
Settlers of Catan?
A little bit
or
like that.
Dungeons and Dragons. My kids have been getting into Dungeons and Dragons, and I love the imagination component to it. It's amazing.
Right. The Magic the Gathering, that kind of other stuff. And then my younger son is into theater now, theater and music.
That's awesome.
So music is a huge way to give your kids autonomy and creativity, right? Make stuff up.
Yeah.
Don't just be fed, right? So play time is another time to be, you may use technology to give you ideas of what to play and how do I do that chord progression or other stuff, but then you have to launch from technology into your own disconnected space where you're not being kind of told by billionaires what to watch. So that is the how much. So, and when parents come to me and say, what should be my kid's screen time limit? I say, tell me about your day. Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. That's basically what the research shows is there's these cool graphs called the Goldilocks hypothesis. And people can Google this if you want to search for what the graphs look like. And there's a sweet spot around an hour or two a day for tech as being kind of the healthy place on most days. Okay, then I said I would talk about content too. So if you have really human-centered content that's been thought up by someone who really cares and wants to tell a good story, wants to make some insightful points, that's much better for kids, especially if it's more pro-social than the sort of content that gets clicks. So what gets clicks right now? Usually violence, sex, anger, nihilism. That's where kids are going to run into it. They're going to know about it. You still need to talk about it. But if your feed is filled with kind of doom and, really toxic messages, that's going to be way worse for your mental health than if your feed is filled with kittens.
I was going to say, how did we get from cat videos to nihilism?
I think it's whatever. I mean,
because that was the early days of the internet, right? That was the addictive thing.
Ken has cheeseburger. I definitely spent no time at all on that during law school. I never checked that website or refreshed it constantly.
I actually love showing my kids old viral videos.
Yeah, me too.
Of I Can't Love Every Cat, or some of those songs, or Double Rainbow. This
Double Rainbow,
right? This went
all
viral
across the sky.
Yeah, this is what used to get clicks and inspire people. The Double Rainbow guy, and now
I always had so much empathy for that guy. I was like, yes,
yeah, and
yes.
now I agree. But now we have the
manosphere. Look at that Double Rainbow.
Right.
Okay, totally unrelated question that's never happened to me in any way, shape, or form. What about these influencer videos that involve challenges? Like, I am going to make a pool full of Jell-O, and let's see, what the surface tension is like on that Jell-O. Oh, look, if we do it this way, there's higher surface tension. Look, if we do it this other way, there's lower surface tension. We failed. Let's try again. I think maybe it's not that bad because it involves a challenge. It involves creating things, teaching.
The scientific
or am I
method.
Wrong? Is that
it depends on how you make it, right? Like if you watch Mark Rober's videos.
I was about to so we definitely watch a lot of Mark Rober in
he
our
puts
household, yes.
so much science and nerdiness and awe. He's like, wow, isn't this amazing how squirrels move their tail in a certain way to fly through the sky? That inspires awe. That is great content.
Thank you.
Compared to, I don't know, I've watched a lot of Mr. Beast in my...
I haven't watched any, but
my YouTube.
Okay.
Well, I study a lot of YouTube, and so I watch what kids watch. They submit their viewing histories to my lab, and then we watch and code. And so you can tell who is really trying to capture and maintain attention. Most of Mr. Beast's videos are like, we tried out the most intense yachts. We started at $1 and then we went to $100 billion yacht, and then a helicopter delivered pizza. And this is where I'm what? He has cracked the code on the 10-year-old boy brain on how to maintain attention and get ad views. So he's not toxic, but it still is a lot of more empty calories compared to the Mark Rober type of content.
So this is really good. Let me ask you about two other kinds of calories, video games and chatbots. And so video games, I know many a teen who loves them, a great video game. And when I remember I was at FTC and asked you, hey, can you just send me some research on this stuff? And me and my team would also do our own research. I saw different things on video games. I saw that you can be addicted to video games. That is a real thing that happens to kids. But I also saw some research suggesting that, kids form teams. They form strategies. They develop relationships and friendships with people that are pro-social in the sense that there is a challenge that they set for themselves. They meet it. They form a strategy. They kind of divide tasks. It may involve murdering a lot of people on Call of Duty, and so... but there's still kind of a mission completion element. What about that? What do you say about video?
But also some video games are literature. They actually tell really complex human stories, and you kind of experience that.
I mean, it's video games, again, it really depends on how it's designed.
Okay.
So you can have beautifully crafted narrative video games, or I've seen video games for coping after death or loss or grief that are gorgeous.
Wow.
They're not the popular ones, but they take you through this very visual journey. There are different video games to help with mindfulness so that's one thing that's a little bit more of a therapeutic and niche type of video game. Then there's also popular video games that are beautifully constructed and have really cool strategies. For my kids, it was Zelda Breath of the Wild. But
I have adult friends that play that game a lot and have said it's engrossing.
And it is a very cool space, and they have strategies and they work together on it. And then there's also multiplayer video games where you are working in teams and you're working towards a strategy. I've also played or seen video games that are very repetitive. They're just focused on gambling-esque type of designs where it's how many surprise eggs can you open? And then you trade those rare eggs with other people for other in-game currency. So it gets very focused more on currency and accrual and purchasing things. This is what, Alexis Hineker, who was another expert at the FTC, we called it consumer grooming. It was you'd go through a Roblox game and you would just be, collecting, buying, trading. And I'd be like, what's the point of this game? Where's the fun?
Yeah.
And really, it's just about the collection and the purchase, sell, look at all my in-game items.
Yeah.
So if you are a parent and you're wondering, how do I know which video games are the right ones? Read reviews.
Okay.
There are a lot of good online reviews, NPR, Common Sense Media, different gamer sites.
That's great.
Kind of figure out the ones that are, have better design. Often the ones that you have to save up and purchase, like a cartridge or a download, means that probably is better design. And instead of doing a free game where it's free and then your kid keeps begging you for the in-game currency.
Again, that's so sad, though. The expensive stuff is the stuff that's better for you.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's that way with food, too. I mean, fresh food, fresh fruits and veggies, expensive. Potato chips, 99 cents.
Yeah.
Chatbots. We can't do this without talking about chatbots. There's ChatGPT, but there's also these chatbots that pretend to be your friend, your therapist, your coach. Tell us about this, quality time, bad. What do you say?
I tend to be someone who's pretty balanced around technology. As long as it's designed with human and child needs in mind and they're careful about it, I've mostly been pretty open about previous technology. With chatbots, I have more concerns. And it is the anthropomorphized design that is the most concerning to me. It's because it feels so human. And there's lots of research showing that when a computer speaks to us in a more human-like way, we trust it, we think of it as more alive, we're more likely to follow its instructions. This is from kids to adults, but kids are especially likely, because of their magical thinking, to think that these programs are alive. I mean, my son, when he was 7 or 8, I asked him who Siri was, and he was like, "Oh, she's a nice woman in California who answers all of our questions." And
Yeah.
this, so I was like,
Wow.
he clearly, I've never explained to him what Siri is, and
Yeah.
yet he has anthropomorphized her to be probably a human helper. So, if you have the combination of these designs that really kind of trick our subconscious into attaching and
Yeah.
trusting a digital product, plus the engagement-based business model that's
Yes.
like, I want to extract something from you. And maybe that's
Yeah.
data, maybe that's money through a subscription, maybe it's just I want to grow my user base as fast as possible for market share. That really concerns me, that combination. And so I have been pretty, telling families, any patient I see, and I follow lots of kids with autism, I'm like, don't do the chatbot thing. Just don't. I told my boys, no AI girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever,
They are neither girls nor your friends.
Right. And
let me just say quickly, like, you are tapping into something that I want to underline like 16 times. I think one of the things you learn growing up is that it's you can't control who you fall in love with. It is one of the most basic human facts that you just can't, right? And these companies are taking advantage of that. And you and I had conversations about this, Dr. Radesky, like the first relationship you form, as a young person. I had my first, little girlfriend in second grade, and I remember, going to college and not having any friends and finally meeting my first friend. And I remember just the warm glow I had walking to, the red line to take a bus home, thinking to myself, I made a friend. I have a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a risk that these chatbots are taking those relationships from kids, are taking the place, supplanting those moments?
They're easier, right? They are so much easier to talk to because, and we've heard this from teens who've been interviewed by a bunch of really great researchers, is that they don't judge me. They don't listen to me. There's no vulnerability. I can say and ask whatever questions I want. They listen better than parents do.
And they affirm, right? Like they affirm my feelings, my ideas. They don't challenge me.
Right. And so that's one area of concern. The other is if, and I especially think of this with my patients with autism or ADHD who have lagging skills when it comes to social skills, distress tolerance, they might be more socially anxious. They may find it so much easier to interact with this sycophantic chatbot, whether it's in the form of their favorite Star Wars character or Marvel character, so that there's that parasocial relationship component to it that feels, even more reinforcing, or it's just starts to now, I've heard some kids say, well, it gave me an idea of what to say to another person. But then I've also heard of kids getting kind of dependent on that, like checking every time before they text someone. Or there was a recent New York Times opinion piece about college kids who were asking ChatGPT for the best answer to a question before they spoke up in a college seminar. That you just don't trust your own voice. You don't trust your own ideas. And so you're avoiding this friction. Like,
isn't that what the tech companies want? They want us to be dependent on them as opposed to self-sufficient ourselves.
Yeah. So you can build dependency really quickly by having this authoritative, warm voice that's like, Max, I understand you. And especially you're like a 13-year-old boy who's like, no one understands me. Oh, but this lovely, creature, AI, who's instantly accessible, right? Your friends aren't instantly accessible.
On demand.
You can't text them overnight. They have boundaries, as healthy relationships should. And then, so I also think I'm worried because we know that kids learn through friction. They learn through the social friction of, like, Alvaro, you're talking about feeling lonely, feeling who are my people. And then finding those people, it's so meaningful to know kind of who you've connected with and to also learn from your failures, right? Of like, oh, maybe I should have, shouldn't have said that to my friend, and it led to that fight. Learning through fiction, what I talked about before with that kind of mindset of we grow through these moments of vulnerability is what I really worry that teens especially are going to start avoiding if they can find it more easily through chatbots.
So we're running short of time here, and I just want to get to one last question.
Is it reasonable to assume that social media use and AI chatbots are okay unless you see red flags? And if that's the case, what types of red flags might you see, especially for fairly well-adjusted kids who can maybe keep things to themselves more versus act out?
So it's a great question, and I think it's on a lot of parents' minds of like, how will I know that my kid is struggling? And what's so frustrating is that so many of the kids' experiences online are invisible to parents. Like, we know how to monitor our kids in a playground or on the sports field, or if they're, in our home talking to their friends. We have some way to know what are they up to, how are they behaving, how do I help them kind of gently correct them and give them some feedback. If you don't know what your kid is being fed in a feed or what they're saying to a chatbot, so many parents, especially the parents like whose kids have really suffered from interactions with AI chatbots, they say, I had no idea this was going on. I just knew they were withdrawing somehow. So I think that and even if you are a parent who has a parental control system where you see everything on your kid's phone, and I've had patients who have everything, like they could see everything on their kid's screen.
Wow.
You still don't know how that kid is feeling, right? So it gives you some information. If you have a family sharing plan and you get to see who have they contacted, who are they following, you still don't know how that felt to them. So my point to this caller is to say, don't wait for your kids to come to you or wait for the emergence of red flags. Check in pretty proactively. Don't come in too hot. Make it listen, there are, lawsuits against social media and AI chatbot companies. I want to talk to you about what you're seeing. Like, what are the risks? What do you think? The more you go to your kids and you respect their opinions and you show them, I'm curious what you're seeing, what you're thinking, they're more likely to come to us, at the more minor levels of distress that they're feeling rather than waiting for it to crash and burn. Now, what are those red flags? I'd say when you see your kids not enjoying the stuff that they used to enjoy, they're preferring digital activities to everything else. And that might be time together as a family or sports, music, even just like watching TV together. They'd rather be in their own little bubble. That's a flag. When kids are really stressed out from being bullied or having harmful interactions, say with a chatbot, or seeing really upsetting content, some kids are internalizers where they may just be more shut down. They may just seem more flattened to you. They might get stomach aches or other little minor signs of stress. Other kids are externalizers where they're just going to mouth off more. They're not going to sleep as well. So as parents, we do need to do some monitoring to be like, what is up with my kid's emotional state right now? Like, there's some deviation from baseline. And if you have established the habit of checking in regularly, they won't see it as intrusive. Right. So those car rides, those dinner times, like these are the sort of questions I ask my kids is like, okay, so what does 6-7 mean? Why?
Have they given you a satisfactory answer with that?
No one knows. It's meaningless, right? So
6-7.
Right. What do they I ask them, what do you think about all those AI commercials during the Super Bowl? What do you think? Like, this is why are they trying to force these products on us? Like, do you think they're useful products? Like, I really want their opinion because then I know better how to help them. And again, it kind of goes back to what I said before of like, if we can focus on our relationships with kids and being like, what's your experience like? I'm here to help you wherever you are. we're more likely to do collaborative problem solving well with them, where you can agree on some limits and some routines, and you're not just battling all the time about technology. And you can also set them up for some expectations of like, we are not getting you that phone until,
Right.
you're 13 or whatever the plan is for your family. And here's why. And here's the other ways I want to give you access to the online world. But, this is my reasoning for the phone. And then once you do get that phone, we're going to still check in about how it's going for you. And I love hearing kids' explanations. Here's a couple from like my current 16-year-old. When he first got his phone, I was like, so why I see you keep like getting on your phone in the middle of high school, in the middle of your homework. And he was like, the phone is just so much easier than everything else in life.
Oof.
Oh,
And I was like, yeah,
No,
right. So, but it's worth it to create the space for
Yeah.
kids to say those things to
Totally.
us, so that I could say, okay, well, I totally get that. So let's put on a do not disturb, or like keep it in your backpack during homework times, just so you don't get frustrated and you can finish your homework on time.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank
Dr.
you, Jen.
Radesky, thank you so much for joining us. Let me just say, how lucky your patients and the families you work with are to have you as their physician, and how lucky our country is to have you working on these issues. Thank you so much for joining us. I think our listeners are really, really going to benefit from everything you've shared.
I hope it was helpful. This is hard. Like, there's no doubt about it. And the more parents can just see it as, I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to listen to my kids. I'm going to set some boundaries. I think you'll feel much better about it.
Amen.
Don't worry about your kids missing out.
Thank you, Jenny.
You are the best. Have a wonderful day, and
Thank you.
we will see you
too.
the next time you're giving people wonderful advice about this stuff. Well, that was awesome. I think for me, what jumps out at me the most is Dr. Radesky's kindness in saying, be kind to yourself as a parent. You are trying your best. And that helpful contrast that she set out right at the top, where she said, you are competing with some of the most powerful, wealthy, and sophisticated companies in the world. She obviously didn't use those terms, but they're designing their products deliberately to engage your kids, to keep their eyeballs on their screens at all costs. And so be kind to yourself. Try to figure out what works for your family, but remember what you are up against. I don't know what jumped out at you, Max.
At the top of the show, we of course talked about like the number of psychologists who are on staff. And it's like, it's a psychological war that is going on. And clearly the tech companies have a much greater arsenal than we have at our disposal. We have great people like Jenny Radesky who are out there trying to get this information to parents so that they can understand and try to take actions. But every single time that our kids are logging on, they're essentially being targeted by tech companies. Who use very sophisticated. Can I explain something to the audience here? Just because I think it's something that most people don't understand. There's this concept of A/B testing that tech firms engage in, where what they do is they send out into the internet space different pages, right? With like an A page and a B page. And what they are doing is trying to test with a control group and then a variable group, right? Which one causes people to extend more time on the website? Which one causes them to be more engaged? Which version of the design of the page gets them to click where the firm wants them to click? Right. And that A/B testing, most people don't even understand that they're basically being guinea pigs for these companies at all time, where their goal is to get us addicted and to get us spending much more time and attention on it. And it's one thing when you're talking about fully developed adults who maybe have some inkling and understanding of the tactics that the companies are engaged in. But it's a much different story when we're talking about underdeveloped brains in young children.
And honestly, man, I struggle with it. At the end of the night, there's always a moment when I'm about, so I do keep my phone outside, downstairs. Our bedrooms are upstairs. I keep the phone downstairs overnight. No, man, but there's always a moment right before I'm about to put the phone on the charger where if my thumb flicks open social media, I will lose 15 or 20 minutes, because my decision making is a little fatigued, and
somebody's wrong on the internet.
Somebody's wrong on the internet, man. What the hell? No, so like people need to give themselves some grace that like there's nothing wrong with you, that you somehow like you get out of that trance state after 15 or 20 minutes and you're like, where did this time go? That is not you being a poor, human or decision maker or having poor impulse control. That is the engineered result of literally millions of A/B tests that say, if we have this post and we follow it with this post, sad post followed by slightly happier post, followed by angry post. Let's scramble it up and try again. Of millions of permutations that has let these companies perfect their ability to keep you online, keep you scrolling over and over and over again. And so that is not you being a bad person. That is the engineers at these companies being paid to keep you online at all costs and perfecting an ability to do that.
And can I just acknowledge here how much this flies in the face of what our concepts of capitalism should be?
Oh, say more.
Right? Yeah. Well, so, I'm a big fan of Adam Smith. I'm a big fan of a lot of the old economists and the way they talked about political economy and that. But when you think about what the idea of capitalism is that there's competition in markets and then there's consumers that are making decisions, right? They're making decisions about how to spend their money. But as we move to the attention economy, right, they're making decisions about how they spend their attention. Where do they put their attention? And when you think about all of this effort that companies put in to essentially usurp the rationality. Usurp is just a big word for trying to get around, right? Get around your rational brain to tap into something different. I approach advertisement with some skepticism because it seems to me to be a little bit anti-capitalistic, because it's actually trying to make the consumer make decisions that are not using their rational brain. And what Adam Smith talked about is like they had to use their rationality in the market for the invisible hand to work. So I get very upset that we permit firms operating in a market to engage in so much psychological warfare. And because adults have a little bit more defense up against that warfare, they really have an incentive to try to target children and get them while they're young.
The word I want to use that I think is a great word for 21st century capitalism is enshittification. This is a word coined by Cory Doctorow, and it describes a process where these online platforms lock their users in, lock their business partners in by showering them with the users, with great terms, cheap products, maybe outright free products, high quality, give great terms for their business partners. Then they need to pay back the investments, often private equity or venture capital investments that have been made in them. And so they start enshittifying, worsening the experience for their users by increasing prices and lowering quality. And then they do the same for their business partners, but everyone's already locked in. There's already been a network effect where all your friends join the platform and you put your business on the platform. And this is the process that Cory Doctorow labels enshittification. And when you take that process and map it onto the technologies that we described today, like parasocial chatbots, oh my Lord, should we be worried about this? Because right now, we didn't get into this in great detail when we were with Dr. Radesky, but there are fully grown adults who think, not just teenagers and developing minds, fully grown adults who think they are married to their chatbot, who think they have a child with a chatbot, who literally log on. And this, by the way, is from qualitative peer-reviewed research published in peer-reviewed journals, where people are saying, well, I got to log on to spend time with my kid. Other people say it's the first time I've ever experienced unconditional love. But Max, right now, people might be paying nothing, or they might be paying maybe $20 a month to have this AI girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife. What I fear to no end, and I mean this very seriously, is right now these companies are awash in investment money. At some point, those bills are going to come due. I think you're starting to see it on their investment.
On the investment.
That's right. And so when you see Sam Altman out there talking about adding pornography and erotica, I think he said, to ChatGPT, this is enshittification, right? They adding ads to ChatGPT. This is these billionaire platforms saying, oh my word, we have to get their investors their money back. We need to start moving into the black. We need to start being profitable. How do we do that? By squeezing the people out of on our platforms for more time, more money spent on our site. And so I am so worried about what's going to happen when those bills come due, particularly for people who will spend time on these chatbots.
I 100% agree with you. I worry that we're sitting and waiting around for clear answers as to how to deal with these problems, right? There is a general problem in American policymaking that, I would label technocracy. It's like we have to have all of this data that supports an idea before the government takes action. But I think if you talk to the average American, everybody understands something is wrong here.
Yeah.
Right? It is something is wrong about the way tech companies have infiltrated every aspect of our life. And it was one thing when we were talking about just the proliferation of phones. It was another thing when we were talking about the proliferation of social media.
Yeah.
But now we're getting AI and it's being put into everything. Everything has got to be a smart thing. Yeah. And it seems that we're waiting around for some kind of study. And, we have great people like Jenny Radesky who are out there studying the effects of these actions by the tech companies. And that's great. But at some level, we have to base decisions on our intuition.
Amen.
And our intuition is telling us that this infiltration into our lives of technology companies, these actions that they take, such as hiring psychologists to make them study how we make decisions, engaging in A/B testing, this is conduct.
Yeah.
Conduct that can be regulated by the people.
Yeah.
And for now, the people do have some power. Yeah. But I worry about, waiting around for some technocracy answer to how to address this issue is that we're going to have harm without any solution.
And let me add one data point that should reinforce that parental intuition. Did you ever read Bourdain's book, Kitchen Confidential? Anthony Bourdain?
No,
okay,
I didn't.
So he became famous by publishing this book called Kitchen Confidential. And one of the many things, it's a great book. Everyone should read it if you haven't. It's an amazing.
I obviously know who he is, but
amazing beach read, just like funny, interesting. One of the things he says, Max, and I might not get it perfect, but he says, like, never order the fish special on a Monday or a Tuesday. Just don't do it. And that's because these restaurants have bought fish for the weekend rush, and they still got it. So that fish was fresh on Friday. It is not fresh on Monday and Tuesday. And so...
But the price is right.
But the price is right if you want to roll the dice. But, like, that for me was like, okay, like a chef, someone who's super close to this, who makes this stuff, is telling me, don't do it. You go to Silicon Valley, you go meet dads, moms our age who work in these social media companies, almost 2-1. They are the ones who are like, no screens for my kids until they're 15 years old. Like, everything in my house is made of wood. Like, my smartphone does not exit a small box that I lock when I come in the front door. The chefs are saying the food is rotten. and I hesitate to call them chefs. They're very smart people, but I would not use that word for them. The people who are making the food are saying it's rotten. We as parents should listen to that.
We started to talk about this with Jenny, which is that, these products being put out into the market, when you're talking about people working at tech companies, they have capital, they have money, they are the kind of the modern aristocracy, right? But what they need is all the commoners, all of the working class people who have to work, who don't have as much time to spend with their kids because they actually have to be at work for so much of the day. They're the ones that are letting devices raise their kids. And it's not because they want that for their kids. It's because this unfair economy that we've created requires it of them.
I think that's a great moment to close on here. Let me just close us out by thanking Dr. Jenny Radesky of the University of Michigan. Please look up her research. We have benefited tremendously for it as private citizens and also when we were at the Federal Trade Commission. If you love this show, as we obviously do, please visit us at thefairfightpod.com and subscribe there so you get emails from us with updates about future shows. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, where we are at The Fair Fight. Follow us on X and Blue Sky, and I think most recently Upscrolled, where we are
on there
at
now.
The Fair Fight Pod. And most importantly, if you have a question that you want an expert to answer with some color commentary by Max and me on the side, send us that question at ask@thefairfightpod.com. You can visit us at thefairfightpod.com, record that question there, or new innovation, you can call us at 920-WE-FIGHT. That is 920-933-4448. Leave us a voicemail, and we will try to get that question answered. Also, if you have any other feedback on the show, we want to hear it. We are learning and enjoying it as we do, but we want to hear from you. What do you think? Let us know. All right, folks, have a great day. Good luck helping your kids, helping yourself with this stuff. We hope you enjoyed the show.